Hello dear learners, I hope all of you are doing well and following the contents of the course. In the previous module on management of people in public organizations, we have discussed about various theoretical frameworks, and I have talked about the aspects of improving the performance of people in the organization, wherein I talked about how to manage people in the public organizations in terms of their motivation, the aspects like the managers in the public sector organizations, they need to find out the ways, in order to see that what motivates people in different contextual settings, right? So I have also talked about some kind of comparisons between public and private sector organizations with respect to very foundations of the motivation as a concept to enhance the performance and hence the effectiveness of the and efficiency of the government and public organizations. So I just want to remind you that we are discussing the concepts in the theme 3, wherein we have started the discussions on module 7, which was on management of people in the public sector organizations. This is module number 8, which is on public service motivation, and we will conclude this particular theme by module 9 on effective leadership in public sector organization. So in today's session, I'm going to start another very interesting topic of study in the context of public sector organization, and in the context of the performance of people in the organization, is about public service motivation. Right, it's very interesting, and a lot of studies are being conducted or have been conducted to find out differences in the motivational patterns and behaviors of people in the context of public sector organizations, thereby meaning that is there something different amongst the people who are more inclined towards joining public services, working for the government organizations, working for the benefit of the people at large in the society. So this particular module, the focus is on understanding the aspects of public service motivation. Right. So the contents of this particular module are based on the text of Rene Fernandez and Malatesta, titled Public Organization and Management. And wherever possible, I have taken other references, some of the Indian research studies with respect to public service motivation and other aspects I have taken resources from. So those resources I will be sharing with you, in the slides. I'll give you the detailed references of those papers and articles and cases. So you can always have a look on those resources to get to know more about the aspects of public service motivation and other related aspects to it, right? So let me continue and tell you about what you can expect from the discussion in this particular module. So first of all, we are going to talk about, I'm going to teach you about something with relation to needs, values, incentives, motives, and we'll see that whether there exist any differences with respect to these important concepts, in relation to the motivation and performance behaviors among the employees, both in private and public sector organizations, right? So once I am done with this discussion, we will move to the another important topic, which is public service motivation. First of all, we'll talk about the motives, and then I'll move to the discussion on public service motivation. So we will look into the details of why we are talking about public service motivation, why it is required to be discussed in the context of much more in the context of public sector organizations. We will look into also the the measurement related aspects of public service motivation and how one can measure it, what is the application of public service motivation, how public service motivation aspects can be used to motivate employees inside the organization, how you will socialize people when they come into the public sector organizations with respect to public service. This attitude of helping behaviors or altruism, work that you want to do for benefiting the society. So all these important things we will talk about, right? After that, there are certain important work related attitudes that we are going to talk about. This basically we are including in the discussion for the people's work related motivation, and of course we are talking about the concept of motivation because all the organizations are largely concerned about the performance of individuals, of course, and hence the overall performance of the organization in this context, right? So we look at some of these important work-related attitudes, the meanings of these particular attitudes, and what the research says about if there are differences in the context of public and private sector organizations, and what public managers can do in terms of, or public authorities can do in terms of doing something about these work-related attitudes so that it can relate to the motivation and performance among the people, right? Following this, we will talk about the positive organizational behavior from positive psychology, the area. And I will conclude this particular module by discussion on surviving and thriving in the public service, right? So overall, if you look at the module, the focus of the module is on public service motivation, but we cannot start just in the beginning we cannot just start talking about the public service motivation. Before that, we need to pick up some discussion with respect to the important aspects like needs, values, motives, attitudes and incentives, and then once it is clear, then we'll move to the discussion on the public sector motivation, and then the another important work related attitudes that I have mentioned, followed by positive organizational behavior and surviving and thriving in public service, right? Now, let's first of all look at why we are talking about these important concepts that I have written on the mentioned on the slides here. Needs, values, motives, incentives and attitudes, right? Saying that these are very important in terms of motivating individuals in the organizations. Let us try to understand in what context these concepts have meaning. These concepts have important implications for both private and public sector organizations with respect to the performance of the individuals as well as the organizations, right? Let us understand. See, in the module, when we talked about that the organizations, irrespective of their context, they have goals and purposes to achieve, right? Now, so when we talked about the organizational goals, right, or I will say in simple terms, organization is looking forward to achieve some ends, right? There are goals that the organizations have to achieve, and there in the sense we can say there are some kind of ends that the organizations are looking to achieve, right? Now, these particular ends require the performance related behaviors from members of the organizations, right? Because goals are achieved when there are performance behavior among the people. Now, what are these performance behavior? Performance behaviors are the behaviors shown by the members of the organization which relates to the efforts that people put in to achieve the outcomes for the organization, right? How much employees are putting in the efforts to do their work, right? How much they are motivated to extend their effort, right? So in the concept of motivation, we talked about this, right? How much one is trying to work, how much engaged they are in their work, even if they are failing, how much they are continuing to try to do their work. So these important performance related behaviors, they are very crucial so that the organizational goals are achieved, organization reach the ends that they want to achieve, that they have set for their organization, right? Now, these performance behavior, how the organization will ensure that these performance behaviors are there in the members of the organization, right? So in this context, when we talk about the performance related behaviors among the people, within this context, we need to find out what is that, or I would rather say, what are some of the important mechanisms or some of the important, the aspects which relates to, performance related behaviors among the people, right? In simple terms, if we look at, in terms of performance behavior, we say that ability is something which is utmost required. People should be able, ability, and we can say competence should be there in the people to do their work properly and perform, right? So this is basically more related to the aspects of knowing something, people are competent and able to do their jobs, right? This is one aspect. Another aspect to this is that what is that, internally motivate people to show those kind of behavior, indulge in those kind of behavior. Ability and competence, of course, they are required for the performance related behaviors. People should know their jobs, people should know their work. But what is more important here is to see what are those things, what are those important factors, right, which leads to the motivated behavior among people? Why would somebody indulge into some kind of actions? What is that excites them? What is them, kind of them push them to indulge into the efforts to, to show those kind of performance related behaviors? So these are the some of the questions that first of all we need to understand in the context of organizations, especially we're talking about the context of public sector organization. But it is not about that these are only important in the context of public sector organization. Both private and public sector organizations, they are dealing with individuals having different need patterns, individuals coming up with different values, different motives, they are excited with different types of incentives, and they carry different attitudes, right? So when people are diverse, they have different motivational patterns, need patterns, their values are different, their motives are different. How one organization, or in the context of public versus private organization, what things need to be done in order to excite these people to continue to put in efforts and go, especially in the case of public sector organization, go beyond the call of duty for to help others, and do some kind of work which give them a lot of meaning, a lot of purpose, and they are doing work for the welfare of the community. So we'll talk about some of the interesting examples also of people who have done that, in the context of public sector organizations, going beyond the call of duty to help the people of their community that they are serving, right? Now, before going ahead with this, let me just briefly tell you about the meaning of these all terms like needs, values, in a general understanding of these important terms as given in the text of Rene, right? So first of all, we'll talk about what is need. What do you think about need? So in the case of the previous, the module on management of people in the organization, we talked about the need hierarchy theory, right, given by Abraham Maslow. What is a need? What do you think about need? And we also have kind of talked about, I discussed about that, because people experience the need deficiency, right? Because of that, they indulge into some kind of behavior to satisfy that particular need that they are deficient about, right? Now, what is need? It is something which is very, very important for an individual to survive, right? It is very much important that this particular thing is important for somebody's survival, somebody's well-being, right? That is particularly need, right? So needs, when people feel deficient about or experience any kind of deficiency, they will motivate the people to behave in that manner to satisfy that particular need. And in case of this thing, we have already seen that people who are looking forward to have more money because their needs are more related to something that can be fulfilled only by acquiring money as a resource. So they look for the job opportunities that can provide them more money. They look for the opportunities that can take care of the needs that they are deficient about, right? So needs are important, I would say, concept, variable, which can give indications to the organizations that try to understand what are the need patterns of employees, right? So depending upon what are the need patterns, the policies, the strategies, or I would say the incentives can be designed in such a way that it will kind of influence people to direct their efforts towards the performance orientation, performance related behaviors. Okay. Second is values. Values will of course look into in little much more detail, but if you look at the reference number 3 is in terms of the value studies in the organizational psychology or behavior studies, you'll see that very famous the name, or I would say authority in the aspect of value is Rockich. So according to Rockich value survey, Rockich defined values in terms of people trying to reach to or achieve something as an end, a state of existence. What is that you want from your life, as an end state of existence, right? So you want to achieve something, right? This is an end. And what are the means that you follow to achieve those kind of ends? Now, what is this is the meaning of this? There are ends that you are looking at, and there are means that you will follow to achieve these ends. Now, according to the values framework, according to the values proposed by Rockich, so these end states, these end states are basically states which are personally and socially preferable ends, and of course the means which are socially and preferable ones, right? Because we're talking about the concept of values. Values meaning something that you consider to correct, it guides person's behavior, right? Something you consider as more socially acceptable, more socially preferable, as opposite to which is not so socially preferable, and this thing, right? For example, value of being honest can be one of the means that you want to reach to a end of. For example, let's say you want to have a comfortable life, right? But to reach that comfortable life, you are not following something which is beyond or which is deviating from the value of honesty, right? So these values are also important, the indicators for the public organization managers to look for, in their organizational members, what are the values that they stand for, because they are ultimately very important in terms of motivating individuals to indulge into performance behaviors, right? We'll talk about some of the examples of what research says about the concept of values in that way. Okay. Then comes motives. What are the meaning of motives? And hence we'll talk about the concept of public service motivation also. Motive is something which is within an individual. It's something with a push, or something there is in terms of some force is there which is kind of influencing or impacting or pushing somebody to do something so that you can acquire something which is there in the external environment, right? So, for example, one person can have a motive to achieve more, resources, to get more resources, right? And ultimately, what happens is that person will then indulge into the efforts, best of the efforts to go, to receive those kind of resources that are available in the environment in which they are working, right? So, what is that motive? My motive can also be to help, others, right? So in that way, I will channelize my energies, I will put in the efforts, I will try to collaborate with people, I will look for the help from the other partners, I'll go at extreme lengths to help people, because that is what motivates me to do my job, right? Right, that's about the aspect of motive. What is an incentive? Basically, incentive, if you look at something that excite somebody, some people to gain access to something, right? Something, for example, in simple terms, very basic terms, if you look at work done well and the kind of appreciation that you get from that particular work, that could be an example of incentive. There could also be another example of incentive when you do your work well. Maybe there is some kind of monetary value which you are going to, some kind of reward or thing which has a lot of monetary value, that can also be considered to be incentive. There could also be a situation of incentive in which your association with some kind of a program, right, can also be considered as an incentive. So these incentives which are externally available in your work environment, they also excite people to indulge into the effort, to put in efforts and their energy to gain access to those particular incentives which are there, and hence related to performance related behaviors, right? Last among these, which is about more to do with attitude. What is an attitude? You think about how do you perceive things around, what do you think about the various factors around in which you are working. For example, if you are a student in a college, you see that how the environment of that particular surroundings, what kind of feelings that you have for that environment, right? What kind of thinking you have for that particular environment. So that ultimately becomes, it tells you about what is your attitude with respect to that particular work environment, or your the study environment, the college you are into. And then depending upon that attitude, your behavior is an outcome, right? For example, if your attitude towards let's say your college environment is very positive and you are very happy about it, it will be reflected in terms of your behavior, in terms of efforts. Put in more effort to prepare really well, do well in the activities of the college, form groups to do various, to participate in various programs, do well in academics, right? So these are some of the important, the issues, the important factors which are more related to, the behavior, and we are more interested in what kind of behaviors. We are more interested in the performance related behaviors in the organizations. That is why we are talking about these important aspects here, needs, values, motives, incentives, and attitudes, and so on and so forth, right? So let us look into some of the insights from literature with with respect to the public sector organization, right? So what it has been it has been found that in the context of public sector employees, and if you look at the references mentioned over here, you will find that across the people working in the public sectors, what are the kind of things that they are saying in terms of their work requirement. They are saying that these people attach much more preference to the aspects like helping others, and they want to involve in the kind of work that is beneficial for the society. So across, it has been found out by the various research studies that public sector employees, no matter where they are, in what context, in where geographically they are working, but what is the commonality amongst the public sector employees with respect to their the preference for the kind of work, or their their motive to do work, is largely coming in the context of helping others, or we can also say that altruistic behavior, altruism is there, and ultimately the kind of work they want to get involved in, that is beneficial for the society, because that kind of work give these people lot of purpose and meaning in their lives, and then further increase in the efforts of these people, right? So I hope that with this background you are very clear about why we are talking about these important factors, because these have important implications for both public and private sector organization in terms of getting work done from people, right? Also, another important the aspect here that you need to consider is the aspect of the context of public sector organization, when manager have lesser control on the monetary incentives, right? So what kind of other strategies, what kind of other things that they need to work on to excite people, or I will say enthuse people to channelize their effort and energy, and wherein that's why we're talking about the concept of public service motivation, right? So this is what is the little background about why we are talking about these important the aspects, and how they are related to the performance related behaviors, and how then we will move towards the other important aspects of public service motivation and attitude, right? So we'll talk about needs, we'll talk about what values, what motives, incentive, and we'll see that whether the contextual differences really matter, whether the context of public and private sector organization does matter, and what is the research insight on it. Various researchers have done studies to find out the different patterns, if there are any difference in patterns of needs, values, and motives. So we will look into it, what the research says about it, right? So we'll look into these one by one, and we'll see the various the insights from the research as well as theory to this particular topics, right? So first of all, we'll talk about needs. So I will not repeat about what is the meaning of needs. I have already talked about this thing. It is something that is important for somebody's well-being, right? So if people feel deficient about it, what will happen? They will continue to put in efforts to until or unless they try to satisfy that need, and then they remove that kind of deficiency experience that they were having, right? So in the previous module, when we talked about the aspect of need pattern, motivational theory, especially Maslow's need hierarchy and Elderfer's ERG theory, I'll just briefly, very briefly, I'll tell you what we have discussed in the Maslow's need hierarchy. So according to Maslow, if you look at, the needs are broadly categorized into these five the different needs, starting from physiological needs, right? Then we have security needs, then there are socialization needs, self-esteem needs, and self-actualization. On the other hand, if you look at the ERG theory, it is more related to existence. The Clayton Elderfer had talked about these needs, existent needs, then comes the relatedness needs, and then finally he talked about the needs on growth, right? Now if you compare these two the theories depending upon the needs, if you look at the the security and physiological needs are more related related to the existence needs of as proposed in Elderfer's framework. Socialization is more concerned with relatedness, and self-actualization and esteem are more related to the growth. Now, if you look at whether there are definite patterns like these, like stages, so some people only having physiological, and then again we need to talk about something or security or socialization. Let's look into what research says about it. Depending upon, of course, I'll also talk about some of the Indian research study, but let's first of all look at what Pinder and Crewson has talked about in terms of variation in the perception of employees working at different levels and different salaries. They say that two different kind of patterns are being found. One is whether people working at different levels have different kind of needs, or perhaps people having different levels of salaries will have different kind of needs. Now, research says that mostly what happen is when people are working at lower levels in the organization. Lower levels mean, if talk about the hierarchy, in the hierarchy, if they are in the lower level, so we can say that they are more concerned with the needs which are more related to the aspects related to money, material awards, or something more to do with the security that these people want to have, right? On the other hand, people who are at the higher level in the organization may have more inclination towards the achievement or the challenge orientation, achievement and challenge orientation, right? That can be two different levels of need patterns, if we can see amongst the people working in the higher level or lower level in the organizations. On the other hand, people who are working at the higher salaries, naturally, if people are working at the higher salary, especially in the context of public sector organization, you can see that these people who are working at the higher level, they are more inclined to indulge into the efforts to do something good in terms of serving the public, or they want to involve in the kind of policy making which has a lot of impact. They want to involve in the kind of programs which is a lot of impact and give a lot of purpose and meaning to people. Okay, so on the other hand, when people are working at the lower salary, as we talked about in the lower levels, also job security and the aspects related to pay are much more important, right? Let us look at one of the Indian research studies, what they said, published in Paradigm. Study by Lather and Jain, Motivational Need, a comparative study of public and private sector associates. So they talked about that Indian executives who are specifically working at the top levels in the public sector organization, among them it has been found that they have lower need for financial gains, but they have higher needs for achievement, autonomy and self-actualization, which is of course more closely related with the other research studies that they have found in terms of levels and the need pattern, right? So this is what we are going to look at, that when somebody is trying to look at in terms of design of the kind of the incentives or the reward systems or the performance related indicators, all these things are taken into consideration. It is good that to know your people, who your people are, what they want from you, especially if you look at the public sector organizations where there is lesser control on the incentive plans. So look for what is that excites these people. If it is more to do with self-actualization or growth needs, or let's say self-esteem needs or challenging work assignments, so you as a leader, if you are having these kind of people or you are the organizational manager, you have to design their job or their work in such a way that they get motivation from the work itself, rather than external incentive, external thing in the environment they are motivating. You need to plan their work in such a way that they get lot of satisfaction from the work itself, right? For example, if somebody is achievement oriented, right, and we have seen in some of the case study in the previous module, somebody who is achievement oriented, they like challenge. They want to take up new challenge every time and they want to prove themselves in terms of their achievement orientation. So these people look forward from their leaders to these challenging assignment, that they want their leaders to involve them in the challenging work, in the, I would say, the work which requires a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and which gives a lot of opportunity to people in terms of proving themselves, right, in terms of their achievement. Work well done, work which is considered challenging, if that work is being done and is appreciation, there's a lot of the important implication for somebody's motivation patterns, right? So especially in the context of public sector organizations, the work is very complex. Person has to work within the constraints. There's a resource constraint. There are a lot of influence around. There will be a lot of intervention from the politics. There will be intervention from the citizens, public. So in this particular environment, what is that will excite people? No, it is not. It cannot be only money, right? So there has to be something more than that. What will people want in terms of working in this kind of environment, right? So with this, I will close this session here with the very foundations of the understanding of the needs, values, motives, incentives, and attitudes. We will continue, this discussion in the next session.